Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the third edition of New Thinking in Industrial Policy, Perspectives from Developed and Developing Countries. I should first recognize the various organizations, groups that have been involved in both funding and organizing this. So the organizers are the Initiative for Policy Dialogue, which is Joe Stiglitz's shop with funding from the Sloan Foundation, the Center for Political Economy, and especially the Idea Lab on Firms and Industrial Policy, which Eric and I direct. The CPE is sort of organized into Idea Labs, has funding from the Hewlett Foundation. It's run out of Columbia World Projects, directed by Suresh Naidu, Katerina Pastor, Ira Katz-Nelson. Other sponsors are Center for Development, Economics, and Policy, which Eric directs, and the Institute for Global Politics, which is here in SEPA. I'm not going to say much other than that this is an interdisciplinary conference, represented in part by the fact that I'm a sociologist, although we actually have separation at the moment on the stage. That's just sort of how it worked out. But we actually try to talk across. I'm now going to introduce one of the other people who's been heavily involved. Oh, I should also, sorry, I was the one who's also supposed to thank the organizing committee, so I'm going to, and it's a big one, so I'm going to name everybody. That's Laura Boudreau from Columbia, Bill Gaerten from Northeastern, Martin Guzman, Columbia, Susan Helper, Case Western Reserve, Luis Jaramillo, Columbia, Nils Kupchak, Columbia, Philippe Frank Brown, Joe Stiglitz, Columbia, Eric Verhoogen, Columbia, and Josh Whitford, Columbia. I'm now going to introduce Joe Stiglitz, who, though an economist, is very interdisciplinary. Obviously, he's gotten a little bit of recognition in economics, I'm told, but he's actually well known outside the discipline of economics as well, and he'll say a little bit substantively about why this now. Joe.
Oh, well, thank you. And let me just add a little bit to some of our funders. At IPD, we get money from Sloan Foundation, from Open Society, and from Ford, and also from FEPS, which is a Foundation of European Progressive Studies. This is the third edition, and it was really exciting during Biden's administration to see that industrial policy was back. But for those of us who had been working in development, it never left. And we've actually at IPD had a number of conferences around the world, and particularly in Africa, about the role of industrial policy. So this is the first time of our three where we've made a big effort to integrate the lessons from developing countries on the globe, what we can learn from them on the design of industrial policy. We've tried to bring into this conference in a fairly unusual way both academics and both theory people like me and people who've done econometrics. And we'll have a study, talk about that later, but also policymakers, people who've actually been trying to implement industrial policies. As all of you know, Biden didn't get reelected, and that has made a major change to the nature of industrial policy, but not to the view about the desirability of industrial policy. It's very clear that in the Trump administration, there is a very strong view that government ought to be shaping the economy. Now, I don't want to get into politics too much, but I think the particular instruments and the particular directions which they may be shaping policy may be wrong, but it highlights both the power of the idea of industrial policy, the idea that just leave it to the market is no longer widely accepted, but the risks that have always been associated with industrial policy, that when you take it away from the market, it may get mucked up. And so we're seeing some of that. So that's why it's so important to have a interdisciplinary approach where we take into account the broader determinants of industrial policy, including political economy, the social forces that are giving rise to the desire to have to have industrial policy, and how we can design industrial policy not only to correct, you might say, the market failures, but in ways that have some consequential effects on our society. And that's why I think this is a particularly interesting venue. So with those remarks, and hoping that there'll be a time in the future where the lessons of rational industrial policy will find a marketplace in the United States, and with the belief that there are places elsewhere in the world where rational industrial policy already has a marketplace. Let me turn it over to Eric for a few comments.
Hello? Yeah. So I don't want to take much time. But one thing I do want to say, what I see this series of conferences and the community that's sort of forming around them as trying to do is sort of strengthen the knowledge base for industrial policy. That in part because there's always been interest in lots of countries in what should we do, but as economists, I haven't always felt that we have a solid basis of studies and evidence to recommend, as opposed to, if it were early childhood education, we could say, okay, we have a bunch of studies, I guess you should do this and this and that. And industrial policy, I don't feel like we had the same knowledge base. And so that's part of what I see our role as doing, is sort of developing a bunch of studies about industrial policies that have been done in various countries in order to sort of inform, hopefully, if there are rational policymakers on the other side, what's done. Okay, so let me just say a little bit of ground rules. We're going to play by economics ground rules, even though we're trying to be interdisciplinary in the sense that you can feel free to raise your hands and interrupt. The speakers have been warned that that's going to happen. The speakers are empowered to shut down questions also and say, I need more time, I need to finish my talk. But we're going to, in the last couple of years, we had people being very, very polite initially. So I think I want to encourage you to be a little less polite and go ahead and jump in and make comments. I think the economists certainly on the stage will be used to that. Hopefully the non-economists will also be able to adjust. Okay, so I think without further ado, I think we should go ahead and get started. We're a little bit early, but I predict we'll need the time because we have a great session lined up. We have Felix Tintelnot from Duke talking about the effects of Buy American. Then we're going to have Mark Melitz from Harvard talking about industrial policies for multi-stage production and battery-powered vehicles. And then Eduardo Morales from Princeton will be talking about market entry and plant location of multi-product firms. So I think what we're going to do is just have the speaker on stage. I'll come and sit down in the audience, and we'll just have just the speaker at the podium while we're going. And we've got 30 minutes each. We'll have a couple extra minutes I think we can add maybe for general discussion at the end. Okay, thanks very much. All right, good, yeah.